Grease stains covered Lucy's apron as she wiped down the same table for the third time that hour. The Starlight Diner never really got clean, just slightly less dirty. Outside the smudged windows, the gas giant Hestia 7 rotated slowly, its orange and red storms creating patterns that Lucy had memorized over 3 years of working this dead-end job. The mining station orbited high above the planet, and the diner served the workers who came off their shifts smelling like sulfur and exhaustion. Lucy had once dreamed of studying alien life. She'd spent 2 years at the university on Earth, learning about xenobiology and imagining herself making great discoveries. Then her parents died in a station malfunction, the insurance money ran out, and those dreams got buried under student debt. Now she served coffee to miners and pretended she didn't remember what hope felt like. The evening shift had been slow, only 5 customers in 4 hours. Lucy's coworker had called in sick, which meant she had to handle everything alone. By the time the last miner left, her feet ached and her back hurt. She still had to take out the trash before she could finally sleep. The storage bay behind the diner was always cold. Lucy dragged 3 bags of garbage through the narrow corridor, her breath forming small clouds in the recycled air. She'd made this trip 1,000 times. She knew every dent in the metal walls, every flickering light panel. That's why she noticed something different immediately. 3 objects sat in the corner near the old freezer unit. They looked like smooth stones, each about the size of a football. But stones didn't belong in a storage bay on a space station. Lucy stepped closer, curiosity pushing past her tiredness. The objects were warm. She could feel heat radiating from them even before she touched one. Her fingers made contact with the surface. It wasn't stone. It was more like leather, but with tiny scales that caught the dim light. And it was breathing. Lucy jerked her hand back, her heart suddenly pounding. The object rose and fell with slow, steady breaths. Years of forgotten xenobiology training came flooding back. Lucy knelt down, examining the objects more carefully. They were eggs. No, not eggs anymore. These had already hatched. These were living creatures in some kind of sleep state. She noticed the pattern of the scales, the way they shimmered with colors that shifted from deep blue to purple to green. Her hand started shaking. Dravokian hatchlings. That's what they had to be. But that was impossible. Dravokians were extinct. Everyone knew the story. 200 years ago, the dragon-like aliens had been hunted down and eliminated because they were dangerous predators. The Great Purge had been a necessity, or so the history books claimed. Lucy had written a paper about them in her first year of university. She'd seen pictures, read descriptions, studied their biology. These creatures matched everything she remembered. But if they were really Dravokian hatchlings, they shouldn't exist. And they definitely shouldn't be sleeping in a storage bay behind a cheap diner. Lucy looked around frantically. Someone must have left them here. But who and why? She couldn't leave them. The station's environmental systems would shut down overnight in unused sections to save power. The temperature would drop below freezing. These tiny creatures would die. Lucy made a decision that would change everything. She took off her jacket and wrapped it around one of the hatchlings. Then she carried it to her quarters. She came back twice more, moving quickly, hoping no one would see her. Her room was barely large enough for a bed and a small desk, but she made space on the floor. She arranged the 3 hatchlings in a nest made from her blankets and spare clothes. Up close, under better light, they were beautiful. Each one had scales that reflected light like oil on water. They were so small, so vulnerable. Lucy could see their tiny chests rising and falling with each breath. She spent the next hour searching through old data files on her worn-out tablet. The station's library had limited information about Dravokians. Most of it was propaganda from the time of the Great Purge. Dangerous, aggressive, unpredictable, a threat to peaceful species. But Lucy found older sources too, buried in academic archives. Some scientists had argued that Dravokians were misunderstood, that they were intelligent, even peaceful, that the purge had been based on fear rather than facts. One of the hatchlings stirred in its sleep. Its scales shifted from blue to warm gold. Lucy reached out carefully and touched its head. It was so warm, like holding a cup of hot chocolate. The hatchling made a small sound, almost like a purr. Lucy felt something strange in her mind. Not words, but feelings. Warmth, safety, hunger. She pulled her hand back quickly. Telepathy. Some of the old reports had mentioned that. Dravokians could share emotions, maybe even thoughts. Lucy's scientific training wrestled with wonder and fear. These creatures were communicating with her on some level. The problem was clear. She had 3 members of an extinct species sleeping on her floor. If station security found them, they would be taken away. Studied, probably killed. The Galactic Council had laws about this kind of thing, and Lucy was just a waitress with no authority and no resources. But she'd already made her choice when she brought them to her room. She would protect them. Somehow she would figure out how to keep them safe, even if she didn't know what came next, even if it was dangerous. These tiny sleeping creatures deserved a chance to live. Lucy settled onto her bed, watching the 3 hatchlings breathe. Tomorrow would bring problems. Tonight she would let herself feel something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. 3 days passed in a blur of panic and discovery. Lucy learned that Dravokian hatchlings ate almost anything organic. They particularly loved the protein bars she'd been saving for emergencies and the leftover synthetic meat from the diner. She also learned they grew fast, very fast. By the 2nd day, they doubled in size. By the 3rd day, each one was as big as a house cat. She gave them names during a quiet moment on her 2nd night. The boldest one, with scales that burned bright red when it was excited, became Ember. The gentle one with soft gray coloring became Ash. The playful, nervous one that shimmered like firelight became Flicker. They responded to their names almost immediately, which told Lucy just how intelligent they really were. The telepathic connection grew stronger each day. Lucy could feel their emotions as clearly as her own. Ember's fierce protectiveness, Ash's curiosity about everything, Flicker's anxiety when Lucy left for work. They felt like children. No, they felt like her children. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Work became nearly impossible. Lucy spent every shift worrying about the hatchlings alone in her room. She jumped every time her tablet buzzed, afraid it would be a security alert. She avoided eye contact with the station security guards who sometimes came in for coffee. Paranoia became her constant companion. Dale noticed something was wrong on the 4th day. He cornered Lucy during the slow afternoon period, his weathered face creased with concern. Dale had worked at the diner for 7 years, ever since he'd left the military. He was good with machines and minded his own business, which made him the closest thing Lucy had to a friend. "You look like hell," Dale said bluntly. He poured himself a cup of coffee without asking. "You sleeping?" "I'm fine," Lucy lied. She'd barely slept 3 hours a night since finding the hatchlings. Every sound made her wake up, terrified that someone had discovered them. Dale studied her for a long moment. "You're in trouble. I can tell. I spent 20 years in the service. I know what fear looks like." Lucy wanted to deny it, but she was so tired, so scared, and she desperately needed help. She made another decision that would change everything. "Can you come to my quarters after shift? I need to show you something." Dale's expression didn't change. "This something legal?" "No," Lucy admitted. "Definitely not legal. Probably really, really illegal. But it's important. Important how? Important like it might be the most important thing that's ever happened on this station. Maybe in the galaxy." Lucy knew she sounded crazy. She didn't care anymore. Dale was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded once. "Okay, I'll come." That evening, Dale stood in Lucy's tiny room and stared at the 3 Dravokian hatchlings. His face went pale. "You're joking," he whispered. "Please tell me this is some kind of elaborate joke." Ember, Ash, and Flicker stared back at him with bright, intelligent eyes. Ash took a tentative step forward, curious about the new human. Dale didn't move. "They're Dravokians," Lucy said. "I found them in the storage bay 4 days ago. Dravokians are extinct." "Apparently not." Dale sat down heavily on Lucy's bed. His hands were shaking. "Do you understand what you have here? Do you understand what will happen if anyone finds out?" "Yes," Lucy said simply. "That's why I need help." Dale ran his hands through his gray hair. He looked older suddenly. "I saw things during the border wars. Classified things. There were rumors that the Dravokian extinction wasn't what the official story claimed. Some people said it was orchestrated, that certain powerful species wanted them gone for political reasons." He looked at the hatchlings again. "I never believed it until now." "What kind of political reasons?" "The kind that start wars," Dale said grimly. "Lucy, if these creatures are really what I think they are, they're worth more than this entire station. There are people who would kill for them. People who would kill to keep them secret. People who would kill to make sure they stay extinct. As if sensing the dark turn of the conversation, Flicker made a small distressed sound. Lucy immediately felt a wave of fear through their connection. She knelt and stroked Flicker's head until the hatchling calmed. "I can't let anything happen to them," she said. "I don't care about politics or money or danger. They're just babies. They need protection." Dale watched this interaction with an unreadable expression. "You've bonded with them. They're telepathic. We're connected. I can feel what they feel." Lucy met his eyes. "Will you help me?" For a long moment, Dale said nothing. Then Ember walked over to him and sat down, looking up at him with eyes that held far too much understanding for a creature only 4 days old. Dale reached out slowly and touched Ember's head. His eyes widened. "I'll be damned," he breathed. "I can feel it. Just a little warmth, trust." He looked at Lucy. "Yes, I'll help you. God help us both, but I'll help you." The relief Lucy felt was overwhelming. She wasn't alone anymore. Together they started making plans. Dale knew the station's security systems. He could help hide the hatchlings' growing heat signatures. He had contacts among the docking bay workers who might help if things got desperate, but their careful planning didn't account for everything. 2 days later, an alien trader arrived at the station. His name was Oren, and he belonged to a species called the Kethrid. He was tall and thin, with skin that looked like polished wood. He asked questions at the docking bay, questions about unusual cargo, questions about biological specimens, questions about anything strange happening recently. Dale heard about it from his contacts and came to find Lucy during her shift. "We have a problem," he said quietly. "There's a trader asking questions. The kind of questions that make me nervous." That same afternoon, Norman Price, the station administrator, made an announcement. There would be a surprise inspection by a Galactic Council representative, someone named Thera from the Vindrani species. She would arrive in 3 days. Lucy felt her world closing in. Ember, Ash, and Flicker were now the size of large dogs. Their heat signatures were getting harder to hide. And now there were 2 separate threats converging on the station at once. "We need to find out who left them here," Dale said during an emergency meeting in Lucy's room. "There has to be a reason they were in that storage bay." Lucy had been thinking the same thing. She'd searched the bay twice more but found nothing, until she remembered the old derelict ship that had docked for repairs the week before she found the hatchlings. The ship had been towed away already, but there might be records. There might be clues. That night, Dale used his old military access codes to break into the station's docking records. What they found changed everything. The derelict ship had been registered to a Dr. Iris Cole, a human xenobiologist. She'd died 15 years ago, but hidden in the ship's manifest was a single encrypted file. Dale managed to crack the encryption using techniques he claimed he'd learned in the military. The file contained a holographic message. When Lucy activated it, a woman's face appeared, projected in blue light. She looked tired but determined. "My name is Dr. Iris Cole," the hologram said. "If you're watching this, then you found what I've spent my life protecting. 3 Dravokian eggs, the last of their kind. I'm dying and I can't protect them anymore. The stasis field will fail eventually and they'll hatch. Whoever finds them, please understand. Everything you've been told about Dravokians is a lie. They're not monsters. They're hope. Keep them safe. The galaxy needs them more than it knows." The hologram flickered and died. Lucy and Dale sat in stunned silence. Outside Lucy's window, the station's warning lights began to flash. Something had triggered the security sensors. The security alarm meant someone had detected an unusual thermal signature. Dale moved fast, shutting down Lucy's room's external sensors while she wrapped the hatchlings in heat-dampening blankets, salvaged from emergency supplies. Ember protested, not liking the confinement, but Lucy pushed calm feelings through their connection until all 3 settled down. "We bought ourselves maybe an hour," Dale said, checking his tablet. "The security system will run diagnostics before sending anyone to investigate. But we need a better plan." Lucy's mind raced. They couldn't stay on the station. Not with Oren asking questions and a council inspector arriving soon, but leaving required a ship, money, and a destination. They had none of those things. Over the next 2 days, Lucy kept working her shifts while Dale gathered information. What he learned made their situation even more dangerous. Oren wasn't just a trader. He had connections to black market collectors who paid enormous sums for rare biological specimens. He'd been bribing Norman Price for access to security feeds, and the council inspector, Thera, had arrived early without announcing her presence. Lucy first saw Thera in the diner during the lunch rush. The Vendrani woman was hard to miss. She stood over 6 feet tall with blue-tinted skin and silver hair that moved like it was underwater. She ordered tea and sat in a corner booth, watching everything with eyes that seemed to calculate and measure. When Lucy brought her order, Thera spoke quietly. "You're Lucy Grant, former xenobiology student, currently working 3 levels below your education." It wasn't a question. Lucy's blood went cold. "Can I get you anything else?" "Information," Thera said. She pulled out a small device and set it on the table. A privacy field hummed to life, blocking their conversation from anyone else. "I'm looking for something that belonged to Dr. Iris Cole. I believe it's on this station. I believe you might know where it is." Lucy forced herself to stay calm. "I don't know what you're talking about." Thera's expression softened slightly. "I was Dr. Cole's assistant for 5 years. I helped her in her search for the last Dravokian eggs. She sent me a message before she died telling me she'd found them, that she was putting them in stasis and hiding them until the galaxy was ready." She leaned forward. "I've spent 15 years searching for them. I'm not here to hurt them, Lucy. I'm here to finish what my mentor started. How do I know I can trust you?" "You don't," Thera said simply. "But consider your options. Oren will sell those hatchlings to the highest bidder. They'll be dissected, studied, used. Norman Price will hand them over to whoever pays him enough. And if the wrong people on the council find out, they'll order the hatchlings destroyed immediately." She paused. "I'm offering you a third option. Let me help you protect them." Before Lucy could respond, the diner's lights flickered. Then all the screens on the walls switched to an emergency broadcast. Norman Price's face appeared, looking nervous and sweaty. "Attention all station residents. We have a situation. An unauthorized biological specimen has been detected in Residential Section C. Security teams are conducting a search. Please remain in your designated areas and cooperate with all security personnel." Lucy felt her heart stop. Section C, that was her section. Thera stood immediately. "We're out of time." "Where are they?" Lucy had to make a choice. Trust this stranger or run alone. She thought of Ember, Ash, and Flicker growing bigger every day. Thought of their innocent minds touching hers. Thought of what would happen if Oren's mercenaries found them first. "Follow me," Lucy said. They ran through the station corridors. Dale met them halfway, carrying a heavy duffel bag. "Security's tearing apart your room. I got the hatchlings out through the maintenance shafts. But we have another problem." He jerked his thumb at Thera. "Who's this?" "Someone who might help us," Lucy said. "Where are Ember, Ash, and Flicker?" "Docking Bay 7. Pete's old cargo ship. But we need to move fast. Oren's people are already searching the bays." They made it to Docking Bay 7 by taking the service corridors. Pete, an old pilot who spent most of his time drunk, was there waiting with his ship powered up. He took one look at the 3 hatchlings, now as big as ponies, and went even paler than usual. "You brought dragons onto my ship," he said weakly. "They're not dragons," Lucy started to say. "They're close enough." Pete's hands shook. "Do you know what happens if the Varathians find out about this? They'll destroy the whole station just to make sure these things are dead." "The Varathians," Thera said sharply. "That's who orchestrated the Great Purge. They feared what the Dravokians represented." "What did they represent?" Dale asked. Thera knelt beside Ash, who had approached her curiously. The hatchling touched Thera's hand with its nose. "Peace," Thera said softly. Dravokians evolved to detect deception and calm aggression. Their telepathic abilities made them natural mediators. They could sense when someone was lying or planning violence. For an empire built on conquest and manipulation, they were the ultimate threat. Lucy felt sick, so they lied about Dravokians being dangerous predators. They created incidents, Thera confirmed. Made it look like Dravokians were attacking colonies. By the time the truth came out, public opinion had already turned. The other species helped with the purge because they were afraid. Dr. Cole discovered evidence of the conspiracy, but no one would listen to her. An explosion rocked the docking bay. Through the viewport, Lucy saw Oren's ship firing on the bay doors. Mercenaries in combat suits poured through the breach. "We're leaving now," Pete shouted, already running for the cockpit. They scrambled aboard. The cargo ship, a battered vessel called the Horizon Runner, lifted off just as the mercenaries opened fire. Dale returned fire from the ship's defensive turret. While Thera worked the navigation console, Lucy stayed with the hatchlings, who were frightened by the violence and noise. She held Ember's large head and pushed calm through their bond. "It's okay. We're going to be safe. I promise." Ember's eyes met hers and Lucy felt a response. Not words, but clear meaning. Trust. Love. A promise returned. Protect each other. The Horizon Runner blasted through the docking bay and into open space. But their problems were just beginning. Pete pulled up the sensor display. "We've got company. Big company." A massive warship was changing course toward them. Its design was unmistakable. Forathian military. They'd somehow known to be in this system. "How did they get here so fast?" Dale demanded. Thera's face was grim. "The automated distress signal from the station. It goes directly to Council monitoring stations. The Varathians must have been watching for any alerts that mentioned unusual biological signatures." "Can we outrun them?" Lucy asked. Pete laughed bitterly. "In this rust bucket? Not a chance. That's a destroyer. It's got 3 times our speed and 50 times our weapons." He looked at the hatchlings. "I'm sorry, kid. We're not going to make it." But then something strange happened. All 3 hatchlings stood together. Their scales began to glow, shifting through colors rapidly. Lucy felt their minds reaching out not just to her but to each other. They were linking together somehow, their telepathic abilities combining. The Horizon Runner suddenly jerked sideways, dodging weapons fire that should have been impossible to avoid. Pete stared at his controls. "I didn't do that." "How did I do that?" "They're helping," Lucy realized. "They can sense the danger and they're guiding the ship." Through her connection with the hatchlings, Lucy could feel it. They perceived space differently than humans. They could sense the weapons fire before it arrived, feel the intentions of the enemy targeting systems, and they were sharing that awareness with Pete through some kind of extended telepathic field. The Horizon Runner danced through fire, performing maneuvers that should have been impossible for such an old ship. They flew into the gas giant's upper atmosphere, using the storm interference to break the destroyer's sensor lock. But they couldn't run forever. They needed a destination. Somewhere safe. Thera had coordinates to a place called Refuge Station. But it was 6 days away through dangerous space, and the Varathians would be hunting them every moment of that journey. As the ship fled into the depths of the storm, Lucy held Ember close and wondered if she'd saved the hatchlings only to watch them die anyway. But when she looked into Ember's eyes, she saw no fear, only determination. These creatures had survived extinction. They would survive this too. Space travel had never felt so slow. Every hour that passed brought new dangers. The Horizon Runner's engines weren't meant for sustained flight at maximum speed, and Pete had to constantly adjust their course to avoid detection. The hatchlings had grown again during the escape, now too large to fit comfortably in the cargo hold. Ember measured nearly 8 feet from nose to tail, with wings that were just beginning to unfold. Lucy spent most of her time with them, learning more about their abilities through the telepathic bond. She discovered they could share more than emotions now. They could share images, memories, even complex ideas. When she thought about Earth, Ember saw it too. When Ash wondered about food, Lucy understood exactly what the hatchling needed. Dale and Thera worked together in an uneasy alliance, planning their route to Refuge Station. The Vendrani woman had information that surprised them all. Refuge Station wasn't just a safe haven. It was an entire network of beings who rescued endangered species from across the galaxy. Humans had founded it 50 years ago after the extinction of a peaceful species called the Rendari. Humans seem to care more about preserving other species than most aliens do, Dale observed. Thera nodded. It's one of humanity's defining characteristics. You see value in life that others miss. Dr. Cole used to say that humans were the galaxy's conscience. You remember what others forget. On the 3rd day of their journey, Ember started showing signs of illness. The hatchling's normally bright scales turned dull. It stopped eating and became lethargic. Lucy felt waves of pain through their connection, a deep ache that seemed to come from Ember's very bones. Thera examined the hatchling with her medical scanner. Her expression grew troubled. Dravokians need certain rare minerals in their diet, elements that are only found on their homeworld. Without them, their bodies can't develop properly. The homeworld was destroyed during the purge, Dale said. No, Thera corrected. It was claimed by the Varathians. They built a military base there. The planet itself is still intact. Lucy looked at Ember, who had curled up in obvious discomfort. How long does Ember have? Maybe a week without the minerals. Less if the deficiency gets worse. The choice seemed impossible. They could continue to refuge station and watch Ember die, or they could attempt something suicidal. Dale was the one who said it out loud. There's a supply depot in orbit around the old Dravokian homeworld. Military supplies get shipped there for the base. If they're mining the planet, they might be shipping the minerals too. That's insane, Pete said from the cockpit. That depot will have security, patrols. We'd be flying right into enemy territory. Lucy made the decision before anyone could argue. We're going. I won't let Ember die because we were too afraid to try. The depot appeared on their sensors 2 days later. It hung in space like a massive wheel, rotating slowly. Ships came and went regularly, hauling supplies to the military base below. The Horizon Runner stayed hidden behind a debris field watching the patterns. We need a distraction, Dale said, studying the security setup. Something big enough to pull the patrols away from the supply section. Pete had been sober for 4 days straight, the longest anyone could remember. He'd apologized to Lucy 3 times for calling the hatchlings things during their escape. Now he volunteered for the most dangerous part of the plan. I'll take the runner in hot. Make it look like we're trying to raid the fuel depot. Everyone loves chasing a fuel thief. They'll destroy you, Thera warned. Not if I'm good enough, Pete said. There was something in his eyes Lucy hadn't seen before. Pride, maybe. Or redemption. I used to be the best pilot in the fleet before the drinking started. Time to remember how. They spent hours refining the plan. Dale would handle the technical part, hacking into the depot's systems to locate the mineral shipments. Thera knew Varathian security protocols and could forge access codes. Lucy would stay with the hatchlings, using their telepathic senses to watch for approaching danger. The operation began at shift change, when the depot was most chaotic. Pete flew the Horizon Runner straight at the fuel storage tanks, all weapons firing. Alarms screamed across every channel. Patrol ships scrambled to intercept. In the confusion, Dale and Thera took a small shuttle to the cargo section of the depot. Lucy watched through the view screen, her heart pounding. The hatchlings clustered around her, sensing her fear. Ember, despite the illness, tried to project comfort. We protect each other. The thought came through clearly, and Lucy had to blink back tears. Pete's piloting was brilliant. He led the patrol ships on a wild chase through the debris field, the Horizon Runner dodging fire that should have destroyed it. Lucy could feel the hatchlings' concentration. They were helping again, their telepathic senses guiding Pete's hands. Dale's voice came through the communicator. We found it. Containers of refined minerals from the planet's core. But we've got a problem. There's a patrol coming our way. We need more time. Before Lucy could respond, the hatchlings made a choice. All 3 of them moved to the airlock. Flicker looked back at Lucy with eyes full of determination. No, Lucy said. You can't go out there. It's too dangerous. But Ember pushed an image into her mind. The patrol ship approaching Dale and Thera. The danger they were in. The hatchlings could help. They could create a distraction of their own. Lucy understood what they were asking. They wanted to fight. To protect the family they'd chosen. She also understood that she couldn't stop them. They were growing up fast, becoming something more than the helpless babies she'd found 2 weeks ago. Be careful, she whispered. Please be careful. The 3 hatchlings cycled through the airlock. Lucy watched in amazement as they moved through space itself. Their wings, still small, didn't flap. Instead, they seemed to push against space with their minds, propelling themselves forward with telepathic force. They appeared near the patrol ship like avenging spirits. Their scales blazed with light, shifting through every color imaginable. The patrol ship's sensors must have gone crazy, trying to identify what they were seeing. The ship turned away from Dale and Thera, focusing entirely on the hatchlings. Ember led the attack. The hatchling opened its mouth and breathed fire for the first time. Not much, just a small stream of flame that splashed harmlessly against the patrol ship's shields. But it was enough to get their attention. The patrol ship opened fire. Lucy screamed, but the hatchlings were already moving. They dodged the weapons fire with impossible grace, their telepathic senses letting them predict every shot. They weren't trying to destroy the ship. They were just keeping it busy, giving Dale and Thera the time they needed. Dale's voice came through again. We've got the minerals. Heading back to the shuttle now. The hatchlings must have heard through Lucy's communicator. They broke off their attack and flew back toward the Horizon Runner. The patrol ship tried to follow, but Pete swooped in with covering fire that forced them to break off. Everyone made it back. The shuttle docked just as more patrol ships arrived. Pete pushed the Horizon Runner's engines to their absolute limit, racing away from the depot. Weapons fire chased them, but the ship's battered shields held. They didn't stop running until they jumped to faster-than-light travel, putting dozens of light years between them and the depot. Only then did everyone gather in the cargo hold to check on each other. Ember, Ash, and Flicker were exhausted but unharmed. Dale had the minerals. Pete was grinning like a madman, clearly riding an adrenaline high. Thera looked shaken but relieved. Lucy crushed Ember in a hug, not caring that the hatchling was now big enough to knock her over. "Don't ever scare me like that again." Ember's response came through clearly. "We protect each other. Family." That night, as the Horizon Runner sailed through the darkness between stars, Lucy mixed the rare minerals into Ember's food. The hatchling ate eagerly, and within hours its scales began to shine again. The crisis had passed, but their celebration was short-lived. Thera's scanner picked up a transmission on Varathian military channels. They'd been identified. A fleet was being assembled, and someone had put a bounty on the Horizon Runner. Not just any bounty, enough money to buy a small planet. "They really want these hatchlings dead," Dale said grimly. Lucy looked at Ember, Ash, and Flicker. They were beautiful, intelligent, and utterly unique. The last of their kind, and the galaxy seemed determined to keep them that way. The journey to Refuge Station should have taken 6 days. They'd been traveling for 5 when everything changed. Lucy was sleeping in the cargo hold, curled against Ash's warm side when the dreams began. They weren't her dreams. They belonged to something ancient, passed down through genetic memory from one generation of Dravokians to the next. She saw a world of green forests and silver cities, saw Dravokians flying in great formations across pink skies. But these weren't the fierce predators from the propaganda. They were builders, teachers, peacekeepers. She saw them settling disputes between warring species, saw them using their telepathic gifts to help others understand each other, saw them as bridges between worlds. Then the dreams turned dark. She saw ships arriving, saw cities burning, saw Dravokians trying to flee, trying to reason, trying to understand why they were being hunted. And through it all, she felt their confusion. They'd never hurt anyone. Why was this happening? Lucy woke with tears on her face. Ember was awake too, watching her with knowing eyes. The hatchling had shared those memories deliberately, showing Lucy the truth that history had buried. "You were guardians," Lucy whispered. "Not monsters. You helped people." Ember's response filled her mind. "We still help. We still care. That's who we are." Over breakfast, Lucy shared what she'd learned with the others. Thera nodded, unsurprised. Dr. Cole discovered the same thing in her research. Dravokians evolved on a world with dozens of intelligent species. They developed telepathy as a way to communicate across language barriers. But that ability grew into something more. They could sense violent intent, calm aggressive emotions, help species understand each other's perspectives. "That's why the Varathians wanted them gone," Dale said. "Hard to build an empire when there's a species that can make everyone question why they're fighting." Pete, who'd been listening quietly, spoke up. "I transported cargo during the Borderland Wars. Weapons, mostly. There were always Varathian representatives pushing for more conflict, more expansion. They said it was necessary for security." He looked at the hatchlings, but maybe they just didn't want anyone questioning their motives. The reality of what they were protecting hit Lucy like a physical blow. Ember, Ash, and Flicker weren't just rare creatures. They represented an alternative to violence, a way to solve conflicts that didn't involve weapons and war. No wonder powerful species wanted them extinct. But understanding their importance made the current situation even more desperate. Thera had been monitoring communications, and the news was bad. The bounty had increased. Ships from multiple species were now hunting them, not just Varathians. Greed and fear had united beings who normally hated each other. "We're still 2 days from Refuge Station," Thera said. "We won't make it. There are too many ships between us and safety." Dale checked their weapon systems. "We've got maybe enough firepower to fight off one patrol. Not an entire fleet." Lucy felt the hopelessness settling over the group. They'd come so far, survived so much, but the galaxy was too big and they were too small. She looked at the hatchlings, who seemed to sense the despair. Flicker whimpered softly. Then Ember stood up. The hatchling was massive now, nearly 12 feet long with wings that could almost spread fully. Ember walked to the viewport and stared out at the stars. After a moment, Ash and Flicker joined their sibling. Lucy felt something building in their minds. A decision forming. A choice being made. They want to surrender, she said suddenly. They're offering to give themselves up if it means the rest of us go free. Absolutely not, Dale said immediately. No deal, Pete agreed. Thera shook her head firmly. We don't abandon family. The hatchlings turned to look at them, surprised. Lucy felt their confusion. Why would these humans risk everything for creatures they barely knew? Because that's what humans do, Lucy said, answering the unspoken question. We protect people who can't protect themselves, even when it's hard, even when it's dangerous. Especially then, she felt something shift in the hatchlings' understanding, a deeper comprehension of what humanity meant. Not just the species that had found them, but a way of thinking about the universe. A choice to care about others even when there was no logical reason to do so. The moment was interrupted by alarms. 3 ships had appeared on their sensors. Not military vessels. These were bounty hunters, fast attack craft designed for pursuit. Here we go, Pete muttered, his hands already moving across the controls. The attack came fast. The Horizon Runner's shields flared under weapons fire. Dale returned fire from the turret, but the attackers were skilled. They spread out, hitting from multiple angles. Warning lights flashed across the cockpit. Then the hatchlings moved. All 3 positioned themselves at different points in the cargo hold. Their scales began to glow, and Lucy felt their minds reaching out, not to her this time, but to the ship itself. To the metal and circuits and energy fields. What are they doing? Thera asked. Lucy could barely explain it. They're reinforcing the shields, using their telepathic abilities to strengthen the molecular bonds, making the metal stronger. It shouldn't have been possible, but the shield readings improved. The Horizon Runner took hits that should have torn through the hull, but the shields held. The hatchlings were protecting their family the only way they could. Pete used the extra protection to pull off maneuvers that made everyone's stomach lurch. The old cargo ship danced between weapons fire, returning shots when possible. One bounty hunter took a direct hit and spiraled away, disabled. The other 2 pressed their attack. We can't keep this up forever, Dale warned. We're burning through power too fast. That's when something unexpected happened. A massive ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel, directly between the Horizon Runner and the attackers. It was easily 10 times their size, marked with symbols Lucy didn't recognize. A voice came through the communication system. Attention unidentified vessels. You are interfering with a protected transport under Refuge Station Authority. Stand down immediately or face consequences. The bounty hunters hesitated, then fled. They weren't equipped to fight something that size. The massive ship hailed the Horizon Runner. This is Captain Rodriguez of the Sanctuary Ship Guardian's Hope. We've been searching for you for 3 days. Refuge Station received word you were coming. We're here to escort you the rest of the way. Lucy felt relief so intense she nearly collapsed. They'd made it. They were safe. But even as the Guardian's Hope provided cover, Lucy noticed something troubling. Ember was weak, scales fading again. The effort of protecting the ship had exhausted the hatchling completely. The minerals aren't enough, Thera said, scanning Ember. They need more than just food. They need their homeworld. The soil, the air, the specific conditions they evolved in. The homeworld is controlled by the Varathians. Dale said. Then we need to change that, Lucy said firmly. Captain Rodriguez invited them aboard the Guardian's Hope. The sanctuary ship was incredible, filled with rescued species from across the galaxy. Each had their own environment, carefully maintained to match their needs. Rodriguez, a weathered woman with kind eyes, listened to their story. The Dravokian homeworld, she said thoughtfully. It's a military base now, but it wasn't always. Dr. Cole had been working on a legal challenge before she died, proving the Varathian claim was illegitimate. Would that work? Lucy asked. It might if we had proof, Rodriguez said. And if we had enough political pressure to force the Galactic Council to act. Thera's expression grew determined. I have Dr. Cole's research, all her evidence about the conspiracy behind the purge. If we could present that to the Council, along with living proof that Dravokians aren't dangerous, we'd need to broadcast it publicly, Dale added. Make it impossible to suppress. An idea formed in Lucy's mind. Dangerous, audacious, and possibly their only chance. What if we went there? To the homeworld? What if we showed the galaxy what Dravokians really are? Everyone stared at her like she'd lost her mind. That's suicide, Pete said. Maybe, Lucy agreed. Or maybe it's the only way to end this. The Varathians want everyone to believe Dravokians are monsters. We show them the truth. She looked at Ember, Ash, and Flicker. They were listening, understanding every word. And through their bond, Lucy felt their answer. They would do it. They would face their fears to reclaim their future. Planning an assault on a Varathian military base required resources they didn't have. But Captain Rodriguez had been running Refuge Station for 20 years, and she had contacts everywhere. Within 2 days, a small fleet had assembled. Ships from a dozen species, all captained by people who'd lost someone to war or persecution. They understood what the hatchlings represented. Lucy spent those 2 days preparing herself for what was coming. She practiced with the hatchlings, strengthening their telepathic bond until she could sense their thoughts almost as clearly as her own. Ember, Ash, and Flicker were changing rapidly now. Their wings had fully developed, and they could fly through space with grace that seemed impossible. They were magnificent. Dale taught her basic combat tactics, though he was clear that fighting wasn't the goal. "We're not trying to win a war," he said. "We're trying to send a message." Thera worked on the technical side, preparing a broadcast package that would go out to every major news network in the galaxy simultaneously. Dr. Cole's research, video evidence, testimonies from witnesses who'd seen the conspiracy unfold. Everything needed to expose the truth about the Great Purge. Pete stayed sober and focused, checking the Horizon Runner systems obsessively. He'd painted over the old name and christened the ship something new, Hope's Gambit. The plan was simple in concept but terrifying in execution. They would approach the Dravokian homeworld openly, broadcasting their intentions. The hatchlings would land on their ancestral planet, while Lucy and the others created a distraction. Thera would upload her broadcast from the planet's communication array. If they succeeded, the whole galaxy would see the truth. If they failed, at least the hatchlings would die on their homeworld instead of in a cage. The fleet arrived at the edge of the system 2 weeks after Lucy had first found 3 mysterious objects in a storage bay. The Dravokian homeworld appeared on their sensors, a beautiful blue and green sphere surrounded by military installations. Dozens of ships patrolled the area. "Last chance to turn back," Rodriguez said over the fleet communication channel. Lucy looked at Ember, Ash, and Flicker. They'd grown so much. Ember was nearly 20 feet long now, with scales that shone like polished rubies. Ash's gray coloring had deepened to silver, elegant and wise. Flicker blazed with colors that shifted like flame. They were ready. "We're going in," Lucy said. The fleet moved forward as one. Immediately, alarms blared across the Varathian installations. Ships scrambled to intercept. Warnings flooded the communication channels, demanding they halt and identify themselves. Rodriguez responded with a public broadcast. "This is Captain Rodriguez of Refuge Station. We are here to return 3 Dravokians to their homeworld. We come in peace and under galactic law regarding endangered species." The Varathian response was immediate. "There are no Dravokians. That species is extinct. You are trespassing in restricted space. Leave immediately or be destroyed." "Well," Pete muttered, "we tried talking." The Varathian ships opened fire. The fleet scattered, each ship following its assigned role. Some drew the military vessels away. Others provided covering fire. Hope's Gambit, carrying Lucy and the hatchlings, made a direct run for the planet's surface. Weapons fire filled space around them. Pete flew like his life depended on it, which it did. The hatchlings reinforced the shields again, their telepathic abilities straining to protect the ship. Lucy could feel their effort. The pain of pushing themselves beyond their limits. "We're not going to make it through the blockade," Pete said through gritted teeth. That's when the hatchlings made their choice. Before Lucy could stop them, all 3 moved to the airlock. Ember looked back at her one last time, and Lucy felt the message clearly. "We fly ahead. We clear the path. Trust us." "No," Lucy said desperately. "It's too dangerous." But Ember's mind touched hers with absolute certainty. "This is what we are. This is what we do. We protect." The airlock opened, and the 3 Dravokians launched themselves into space. They flew directly at the Varathian blockade, their scales blazing with light so bright it registered on every sensor in the system. The Varathian ships hesitated, confused by what they were seeing. In that moment of hesitation, the hatchlings struck. Not with violence, but with their true power. They released a telepathic wave that washed over every ship in the blockade. Lucy felt it through her bond with them. The wave carried no malice, no aggression. Instead, it carried truth, understanding. The telepathic projection showed every Varathian soldier what their species had done, showed them the peaceful civilization that had been destroyed, showed them the lies they'd been told, showed them what Dravokians really were. Soldiers began questioning their orders. Some ships stopped firing entirely. Others broke formation, their crews arguing among themselves. The blockade fell apart as individual Varathians confronted the truth they'd been hiding from. Hope's gambit flew through the gap, the hatchlings leading the way. They descended through the atmosphere together, leaving trails of fire across the sky. Lucy watched the planet below grow closer, forests and mountains, rivers and plains. This was the world Dravokians had called home for millions of years. They landed in a valley that had once held a major city. Ruins remained, overgrown with vegetation. The hatchlings touched the soil and their scales flared with color. Lucy felt their joy, their connection to this place. They were home, but there was no time to celebrate. Varathian ground forces were converging on their position. Dale set up defensive positions while Thera ran for the old communication array at the city's center. She had maybe 10 minutes to upload the broadcast before the Varathians arrived in force. Lucy stayed with the hatchlings. They'd spread out across the valley, touching trees and stones, breathing in the air of their ancestral home. She could feel their strength returning, their bodies finally getting what they'd been missing. Then the Varathian forces arrived. Not just soldiers, but their commander. Admiral Hadrian himself descended in a massive command ship. He stepped out surrounded by guards, his expression cold. "Surrender the creatures," Hadrian demanded. "This planet belongs to the Varathian Empire. Those things have no right to be here." Lucy stepped forward, placing herself between the Admiral and the hatchlings. "These aren't things. They're people, and this is their world, not yours. They're weapons," Hadrian insisted. "Dangerous and unpredictable. We eliminated them for the safety of the galaxy." "You eliminated them because you were afraid," Lucy said. Her voice carried across the valley, broadcast by Thera's equipment to the fleet above and beyond. Afraid of a species that could make people question why they were fighting. Afraid of losing power. So you lied. You called them monsters and convinced the galaxy to help you commit genocide. You have no proof. Actually, we do. Thera's voice came through the speakers. Dr. Cole's research is now broadcasting across every major network in known space. Millions of people are seeing the evidence right now, seeing what really happened, seeing what you did. Hadrian's expression darkened. He raised his weapon, pointing it directly at Lucy. "Then we'll destroy the evidence, starting with you and those creatures." Before he could fire, the 3 hatchlings moved, but they didn't attack. Instead, they positioned themselves around Lucy, creating a protective circle. Their minds reached out again, not just to the soldiers, but to everyone watching the broadcast. They shared what they were, what they felt, their capacity for peace, for understanding, for helping others. Lucy felt it washing over her, felt the pure compassion that drove the Dravokian species. They didn't hate the Varathians even after everything. They only wanted to help, to heal, to bridge the gaps between species. The telepathic wave reached the Varathian soldiers. One by one, they lowered their weapons. They'd felt the truth directly, experienced it in their own minds. These weren't monsters. These were exactly what the galaxy needed. Hadrian looked around at his troops, seeing their rebellion. "I order you to fire!" No one moved. The Admiral stood alone, his authority crumbling. The broadcast continued, carrying the scene across the galaxy. Beings everywhere watched a single human woman and 3 young Dravokians standing against an empire, armed with nothing but truth. Rodriguez's voice came through. "Admiral Hadrian, the Galactic Council has just issued an emergency order. The Dravokian homeworld is being placed under protected status. All Varathian forces are to withdraw immediately. Refusal will result in sanctions and possible military intervention by Council peacekeeping forces." The political pressure had worked. Too many people had seen the truth. The Council had no choice but to act. Hadrian glared at Lucy with pure hatred. "This isn't over." "Yes," Lucy said quietly. "It is." The Varathian forces withdrew. Ships lifted off, abandoning the installations they'd built on stolen land. Within hours, the planet was clear of military presence. The fleet from Refuge Station landed, bringing supplies and support. Over the next few days, something remarkable happened. The broadcast had sparked a movement across the galaxy. People came forward with information about other species that had been wrongly persecuted. 12 more Dravokian eggs were found, hidden in various locations by sympathizers who'd saved them during the purge. When the eggs were brought to the homeworld and hatched, Lucy cried with joy. Ember, Ash, and Flicker were no longer the last. They had siblings now. A future 3 years passed. The Dravokian homeworld was renamed New Draconis and became a sanctuary for endangered species from across the galaxy. The population of Dravokians grew slowly but steadily. 53 had hatched so far, and each one was precious. Lucy became the official human ambassador to New Draconis. She helped Dravokians learn about the modern galaxy, while teaching other species about Dravokian culture and abilities. The young dragons were beginning to travel, serving as mediators in conflicts. Already 3 wars had been averted through their intervention. Dale ran security for the sanctuary planet, training both humans and aliens in protection techniques. He'd found his redemption in preserving what he'd once helped destroy. Thera served as the Galactic Council liaison, ensuring the Dravokians received the support and protection they needed. She'd become famous across the galaxy as the woman who'd exposed the truth. Pete remained sober and became the sanctuary's chief pilot. He flew diplomatic missions, carried supplies, and told anyone who'd listen about the day he helped save a species from extinction. Lucy stood on a cliff overlooking a valley filled with young Dravokians. Ember sat beside her, now magnificent and fully grown. The dragon was massive, its scales gleaming in the sunlight. Through their bond, which had only grown stronger over the years, Ember shared a thought. You saved us. Now we save others. That's what family does. Lucy smiled. Yes, that's exactly what family does. Ships were arriving at the spaceport. Refugees from a war-torn system seeking sanctuary. Scientists hoping to study Dravokian telepathy for medical applications. Diplomats from species who'd once supported the purge, now seeking to make amends. The galaxy was learning slowly to be better. Ember spread wings that could blot out the sun and launched into the sky. Ash and Flicker joined their sibling, along with dozens of younger Dravokians. They flew in formation, a sight that would have been impossible just 3 years ago. A sight that should have been lost forever. But a waitress had found 3 hatchlings sleeping peacefully in a storage bay, and she'd chosen compassion over fear. That choice had changed everything. Lucy watched the dragons dance through the air and thought about the journey that had brought them here. All the danger, all the fear, all the impossible choices. She'd do it all again without hesitation, because that's what humans did. They stood up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. They protected the helpless. They preserved hope even when everyone said it was extinct. They looked at the universe and saw not what it was, but what it could be. And sometimes, if they were very lucky, they got to see that better universe become real. A young Dravokian, barely 3 months old, landed clumsily beside Lucy. Through the telepathic network all Dravokians shared, it asked a question. Why did humans help us when no one else would? Lucy thought about all the possible answers. About human stubbornness, about moral principles, about the way her species couldn't seem to walk away from those in need. But she settled on the simplest truth. Because you needed help. And that was enough. The young dragon thought about this, then launched itself back into the sky with an awkward grace that made Lucy smile. She looked up at the dragons filling the air above New Draconis. At the impossible future that shouldn't exist. They'd believed the dragon hatchlings were gone forever. But forever didn't account for the sheer stubborn hope of beings who refused to give up. Who chose to care when caring was dangerous. Who looked at 3 sleeping hatchlings and saw not problems or profit, but people worth saving. The galaxy was learning what humanity had always known, that the measure of a civilization wasn't in its weapons or its territory. It was in what it chose to protect, in who it chose to save. And sometimes the beings you saved would turn around and save you right back. That was the dragon's legacy, and it was humanity's greatest gift to the stars.